Goes to Thailand, where demonstrators have been on the streets demanding that Prime Minister Prayuth Chan-ocha resigns immediately. Pro-democracy demonstrators in Thailand expanded their protests, demanding reform of the monarchy. Thousands of Thai protesters marched to the German embassy in Bangkok to put pressure on King Maha Vajiralongkorn, who spends much of his time in Germany. Protesters have appealed to Angela Merkel's government to investigate whether Thailand's king has exercised political power during his extended stays in Bavaria. The German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas said that the European power continues to look into his behavior during sojourns in Bavaria and that it would be unacceptable for King Maha Vajiralongkorn to conduct politics there. In fact, on Monday, Thailand's parliament began a special session to address the prolonged tensions in the country. The non-voting session of parliament is expected to last 2 days, for which only 450 of the total of 731 members of both houses had signed in.
ผมเองในนามของรัฐบาลในนามรัฐมนตรีรู้ว่าทุกอย่างอาจจะต้องเปลี่ยนแปลงไปตามกาลเวลาของโลกปัจจุบันโลกแห่งเทคโนโลยีโลกแห่งดิจิทัลแต่เราต้องยอมรับนะครับว่าในประเทศไทยของเราคนจำนวนหลายล้านหลาย10 ล้านคนนะครับก็ไม่อยากเห็นการเปลี่ยนแปลงในขณะที่เกิดความวุ่นวายสับสนโอลหม่านนะทุกคนก็มีความเชื่อของตัวเองเขาเห็นเขาเชื่อมาตลอดชีวิตของเขาเพราะนั้นเราจะต้องมีความสมดุลระหว่างความต้องการของแต่ละคนกับความต้องการของคนอื่นๆในสังคมด้วยได้
The pro-democracy protesters have not been deterred by emergency measures imposed earlier, nor has the crackdown dented their spirits. The protests have been raging on for over 3 months now, with the resignation of the Thai Prime Minister as central demand. The protesters warn that the Thai Prime Minister Prayuth Chan-ocha resign immediately, and the amendment of the constitution is also on the list of demands. And reforming the monarchy so that it can conform to democratic norms is another crucial demand in this protest movement. Now joining us from Edinburgh is journalist Andrew McGregor Marshall for more updates on the protest movement in Thailand. Andrew, thanks for joining us. Tell us a little bit about this protest movement in Thailand. It is led by students and is unprecedented when it comes to the demands. So what do these protesters want when it comes to reform?
Well, the most significant demand, and the reason it's so unprecedented and historic, is that for the first time ever in Thailand, the protesters are openly calling for reform of the monarchy. Now, Thailand is supposed to be a constitutional monarchy, rather like the UK or various European monarchies, where the king doesn't really have real power. But in fact, in Thailand, the palace wields immense power. And the current king, King Vajiralongkorn, is really unpopular with most of the Thai population. He's been abusing his power. He's been through several scandals. And this has caused a large amount of discontent in Thailand. So protesters are openly, for the first time ever, demanding that the monarchy reforms itself. And this is why it's such an amazing moment and remarkable moment in Thai history.
Right, absolutely. Now, as you just pointed out, Andrew, the monarchy is considered almost sacrosanct in Thailand. And in this protest, reform is being demanded within the monarchy with special focus on the king and his whereabouts, even in Germany. So tell us more. What lies ahead, and will the king respond to these demands?
Well, it looks very unlikely that the monarchy or the military will agree to reform themselves. From everything we know about the king, there's no way he'll agree to lessen his power. And his allies in the military also don't want to stop meddling in politics. Just last Friday, we saw the king go on a walkabout outside the Grand Palace and encouraging royalist supporters who'd stood up against the protesters. So he almost seemed to be trying to create conflict between the royalists and the democracy protesters. Unfortunately, that's the way things look like they're going. Several times in Thailand's modern history in the past half century, we've seen violence on the streets of Bangkok where the military has opened fire on peaceful protesters. And there is a worry that because the palace won't reform itself, we're heading for a confrontation where we might see violence on the streets of Bangkok again.
Right. All right, Andrew, thank you so much for joining us on this broadcast and for all your insights into this news development in Thailand.